A liquid mercury river runs through a sealed tunnel under a pyramid in Mexico, and the men who poured it there vanished from history without leaving a single name. 18 centuries ago, someone carried poison metal into the earth, filled 3 stone chambers with it, and sealed the entrance so tightly that the wooden statues inside never fully rotted. Under this country, past the beaches and the postcard ruins, sits a second Mexico, built downward instead of upward. Flooded tunnels stacked with jade and bone, a pyramid standing over a lake no engineer can explain, a cave found in 1966 and forgotten for 30 years. Every place on this list is real, documented, and dated. Join us, and let's discover what's really buried beneath Mexico. Let's go.
Number 13. Aguada Fenix. A satellite laser scan in 2020 found the largest structure the Maya ever built, and it had been standing in plain sight for 3,000 years. Aguada Fenix is a rectangular earthen platform in Tabasco, stretching nearly a mile long, wider than 10 football fields laid side by side, and it holds more raw material than the Great Pyramid of Giza. Nobody saw it because from ground level, it looks like a gentle hill. You could walk across the top of it in 15 minutes and never realize you were standing on one of the largest man-made objects in the ancient Americas. Researchers dated it to around 1800 BCE, centuries before the Maya supposedly had kings, priests, or any centralized authority capable of organizing thousands of laborers for decades. That timeline does not fit the textbooks. Someone commanded that workforce. Someone drew the plans. The platform's causeways and ritual pigments align with astronomical directions and the 260-day sacred calendar, suggesting the mound is not just an earthwork, but a physical model of the Mesoamerican universe, a map so large it can only be read from the sky. For 3,000 years, farmers planted crops on top of a cosmic diagram and never knew it. The scan that found Aguada Fenix covered less than 1/10 of the region it sits in, and the same laser technology has already started flagging more shapes nearby, shapes nobody has walked out to check yet. Researchers now suspect a whole network of similar earthworks may be hiding under the Tabasco canopy, each one waiting for the next flight of the laser plane to finally reveal it.
Number 12. Cenote Sagrado. American consul Edward Thompson dropped a mechanical dredge into a 60-meter-wide sinkhole in the early 1900s and pulled up gold, jade, copper bells, and the bones of at least 150 human beings. The sacred cenote at Chichen Itza sits at the bottom of a vertical drop of nearly 90 feet, its water a still, dark green. And for the ancient Maya, it was a direct telephone line to Chak, the rain god. When drought hit or war turned bad, offerings went in: jade, textiles, resin, and children. Bone analysis decades later revealed something the myth does not explain. Many of the young victims pulled from the mud showed signs of chronic malnutrition, anemia, and childhood disease. These were not the healthiest, most beautiful members of Maya society sent to please a god. They were already sick, already dying. One theory says the ill were chosen because they stood closer to the world of the dead. Another theory is colder. In a famine, a community quietly removes those it can no longer feed and wraps the decision in ritual so nobody has to call it what it is. The thick layer of silt at the bottom of the cenote has barely been touched by divers, and the oldest offerings, the very first ones ever thrown into that water, are buried under all of it, waiting. Some of the jade recovered from the mud did not even originate on the Yucatan Peninsula. Chemical sourcing traced pieces back to Oaxaca and possibly regions further south, meaning this single well received tribute carried across enormous distances of the ancient continent.
Only 1% of people know the dark truth behind what we are about to show you next. If you want to be part of the few who actually know what's happening in the world, subscribe and leave a like right now. Done? Look at this.
Number 11. Balamku. A cave explorer found the entrance in 1966, wrote it down, and the discovery sat forgotten in an archive for almost 30 years. When archaeologists finally crawled inside in 2019, journalists called it the find of the century. Balamku, the cave of the jaguar god, sits barely a mile from Chichen Itza and holds more than 200 ceramic vessels arranged on natural stone shelves exactly as priests left them roughly 1,000 years ago. The cave's stable microclimate kept the organic material intact. Some pots still stand upright, paint unfaded, as if the people who placed them stepped out for a moment and never came back. Several vessels have a deliberate hole punched through them, not damage from time, but an intentional act. In Maya tradition, breaking a ritual vessel released its spirit and sent it onward to the gods. That means whoever left these offerings performed a final, deliberate act of closure, most likely during the droughts and wars that crippled Chichen Itza between the 9th and 10th centuries. Several vessels are shaped like Tlaloc, the rain god, suggesting priests came here specifically to beg for water that never fell. Then the visits simply stopped. No ritual sealing, no ceremony marking the end, just silence, and a question nobody has answered. What happened during the very last visit to that cave? Some of the vessels still hold traces of copal resin residue, the burned incense that once filled that narrow chamber with smoke. And researchers have not finished cataloging every object still resting where a Maya priest set it down for the final time.
Number 10. Sac Actun. A diver descended 40 meters into a flooded cave system in 2006 and found a complete human skeleton lying exactly where its owner had died 13,000 years earlier. Sac Actun stretches more than 220 miles, one of the largest underwater cave systems on the planet, and the skeleton found inside it, nicknamed Naya, is among the oldest fully preserved human remains in the Americas. Around her lay bones of mastodons and giant ground sloths, animals that vanished from the region millennia ago. When this person walked through the cave, the passage was dry limestone, not a flooded grave. Sea levels rose later, closing the exit and sealing the chamber along with everyone and everything inside it. She never knew her last walk would end inside a corridor that the ocean would eventually swallow. Divers exploring these submerged galleries describe visibility stretching nearly 100 feet through water so clear it feels like moving through glass, past ceilings fused with stalactites that took hundreds of thousands of years to form. Only a fraction of Sac Actun has ever been mapped. Somewhere in its unexplored branches, cave divers keep finding more bones, more animals frozen at the exact moment the water arrived. And nobody knows how many more stories like Naya's are still sealed down there. Every new expedition into the system tends to add several more kilometers of surveyed passage to the map, meaning the true length of Sac Actun, and everything still resting undisturbed inside it, keeps growing.
Number 9. Cenote Bajo Kukulcan. Not the tunnels around the pyramid, directly under it. Ground-penetrating radar in 2015 revealed something underneath one of the most photographed monuments on Earth, a single cenote, one flooded sinkhole roughly 35 meters wide and more than 20 meters deep, sitting directly beneath the entire foundation. The Temple of Kukulcan at Chichen Itza rises 9 tiers to 64 feet, its 4 staircases each carrying 91 steps, adding up to 365 when you count the top platform, 1 step for every day of the solar year. Twice a year, on the equinox, a shadow shaped like a serpent slides down the northern staircase in an optical illusion engineered directly into the stone angles. What most visitors never learn is that this pyramid is not one structure. Geophysical scans found at least 2 earlier pyramids nested inside it like a set of hidden shells, the oldest one buried at the very center, never seen from outside since the day builders sealed it under newer stone. Nobody knows what changed between construction phases or what the builders were protecting inside that innermost core. And now the radar data shows the entire multi-layered monument resting over open water, a karst lake that has not swallowed the pyramid in over 1,000 years, despite limestone continuing to dissolve beneath it. Engineers who study the data go quiet when asked how long that can last. Some geophysicists now believe the layered pyramid was redesigned across centuries specifically because the builders knew what sat beneath the bedrock, adjusting weight distribution with each new outer shell.
Number 8. Sistema de Cuevas de Chichen Itza. That single well is only the beginning. Pull back from the pyramid entirely, and hundreds, possibly thousands of miles of flooded tunnels run beneath the jungle surrounding Chichen Itza. A separate labyrinth connecting dozens of other entrances scattered across the wider site. At depths between 5 and 12 meters, cave divers have found ceramics, jade, animal bone, and burned offerings resting undisturbed for 700 or 800 years, positioned with a precision too deliberate to be accidental. These are underwater shrines, built around altars that no longer exist above the waterline, which means whoever placed those offerings knew the layout of these flooded corridors as intimately as a person knows the floor plan of their own house. Some entrances were deliberately sealed with stone and packed earth centuries before Europeans ever arrived. Not from collapse, but by intention, possibly marking a ritual closing of a space that had completed its purpose. Nobody has explained why some passages were sealed while others were left open. Most of this underground network remains uncharted, unmapped, and untouched by any human being, ancient or modern. The city that tourists photograph above ground is, by every measure divers can produce, smaller than the labyrinth running beneath it. And the largest portion of that labyrinth has never been seen by anyone still alive. Cave diving teams surveying the region continue to connect passages once thought separate, meaning the underwater map beneath Chichen Itza is still being redrawn today, decade by decade, expedition by expedition.
Number 7. Túnel de la Serpiente Emplumada. Archaeologist Sergio Gómez Chávez noticed a sinkhole forming at the base of the Temple of the Feathered Serpent in 2003 after heavy rain exposed a void beneath the third largest pyramid in Teotihuacan. What followed was 12 years of excavation, nearly 80,000 recovered objects, and a tunnel over 100 meters long that had been sealed for 18 centuries so completely that aromatic resins, metallic mirrors, and carved wooden figures survived almost fully intact. Among the finds were golden spheres about 4 inches wide that shimmered like a star field when moved, alongside wooden sculptures preserved only because the tunnel had been perfectly isolated from open air. Then came the detail nobody expected. At the tunnel's far end, sealed chambers held pools of liquid mercury, a toxic metal with no natural source in that location, meaning someone mined it, transported it, and poured it there on purpose. Official theory frames it as a symbolic underworld river beneath a city built to mirror the cosmos. What that theory cannot explain is why the 3 chambers built to hold this poisoned river were found completely empty of remains. No tomb, no ruler, just a shimmering, abandoned river deep under a city where every known leader is nameless. The excavation team stopped digging further when the risk of collapse became too severe, meaning whatever sits past that final wall of packed earth has never been reached by human hands since the day it was sealed 1,800 years ago.
Number 6. Pyramid del Sol de Teotihuacan. At its height in the early centuries CE, Teotihuacan held a population between 100,000 and 150,000 people, a city on the scale of Imperial Rome, and archaeologists have never found the name of a single king who ruled it. Its central artery, the Avenue of the Dead, runs nearly 2.5 miles in a north-south line so precise it still earns respect from modern surveyors, flanked by the Pyramid of the Moon and the 65-meter Pyramid of the Sun, whose entire base deviates from level by less than 30 centimeters. The name we use today came from the Aztecs, centuries after the city had already emptied, and it translates to the place where the gods were created. Unlike the Maya, who left thousands of hieroglyphic texts, Teotihuacan's builders left almost no writing at all, as if they chose architecture and geometry instead of language to speak for them. Stranger still, the most thoroughly excavated major city of its era has produced 0 royal tombs. Egyptian pharaohs built entire monuments to their own deaths. Teotihuacan's elite left ritual burials and sacrificial remains woven into building foundations, but no throne room for the dead, which means either power here was never held by a single ruler, or the tomb that would prove otherwise is still buried,
waiting under a city whose real name we will never know. Archaeologists have spent decades excavating residential compounds across the city, cataloging thousands of burials, and still the one grave that would settle the entire question of who actually governed Teotihuacan has never surfaced.
Number 5. Cueva de Naj Tunich. Teotihuacan buried its silence in stone and left no names at all. Deeper south, the Maya buried theirs in ink on a cave wall nobody was ever supposed to read. Inside a limestone system in the Petén region near the Mexico-Guatemala border, archaeologists found one of the richest collections of ancient Maya writing ever discovered, on cave walls rather than temple stone. Naj Tunich holds ink-drawn hieroglyphic texts and paintings running for hundreds of meters into total darkness. Some panels signed by named scribes who described their descent into the cave as a spiritual pilgrimage into the underworld itself. Torch soot still stains the ceiling in places, evidence of how deep visitors pushed with nothing but firelight to guide them. Some passages require crawling through gaps barely wide enough for a human body, meaning the artists who painted the deepest chambers accepted real physical risk to leave their marks where almost nobody would see them again. Looters found part of the cave before archaeologists could document it, and an unknown number of painted panels were destroyed or stolen before the site gained protection. What survives suggests the cave functioned as a direct gateway to Xibalba, the Maya underworld, a place where scribes came specifically to write in the presence of death. Researchers still debate how much of the cave's deepest sections remain undocumented. Some surviving signatures name scribes from cities more than 100 miles away, meaning word of this cave's spiritual significance traveled across the Maya world, drawing pilgrims willing to crawl through total darkness just to leave their names near the dead.
Underneath a Catholic church built on a hilltop in Puebla sits the largest pyramid base ever constructed anywhere on the planet by total volume, larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. And for centuries, most people who walked past it assumed it was simply a natural hill. The Great Pyramid of Cholula covers an area equivalent to roughly 45 football fields, built up over multiple centuries in layers, each civilization constructing over the last without erasing it. Inside its earthen mass run more than 5 miles of excavated tunnels dug by archaeologists trying to map a structure too massive to understand from any single angle. Spanish conquistadors in the 16th century built a church directly on top of what they thought was a hill, unaware they were placing a Catholic altar on the summit of a monument that had been sacred for over 1,000 years before their arrival. Only in the 20th century did tunneling reveal murals, altars, and burial offerings buried inside the layered core, proving the hill was never a hill at all. Large sections of the pyramid's interior remain unexcavated to this day, sealed inside a mountain of earth that an entire town has lived on top of without knowing what silently supports their streets. Engineers mapping the tunnel network still find new chambers branching off unexpectedly, meaning the true internal structure of the largest pyramid on the planet remains only partially understood even now. 5 centuries after a church was built on top of a monument nobody realized was there.
Number 3. Gruta de Loltun. Red and black handprints cover the walls of a cave system in Yucatan, pressed there by human hands more than 3,000 years before the first Maya pyramid was ever built. Loltun, whose name translates to stone flower, holds the longest continuously used archaeological record on the entire peninsula, with evidence of human presence stretching back roughly 7,000 years and possibly further. In 1978, archaeologists working the deepest chambers uncovered a carved stone monument, now called the Loltun Warrior, a relief so eroded and stylistically unusual that its exact origin and date remain formally disputed to this day. Bones of extinct Ice Age animals,
mastodons, giant sloths, and horses that vanished from the Americas thousands of years ago were found scattered through the same chambers as pottery shards from Maya civilization, meaning hunters and priests used this exact cave across an unbroken span of time longer than the pyramids of Egypt have existed. Some passages held pollen residue and charcoal layers that researchers used to reconstruct ancient droughts, tying the cave's abandonment periods directly to the same climate collapses that emptied entire Maya cities above ground. The handprints themselves cluster in specific chambers, never randomly placed, suggesting a ritual purpose nobody has fully decoded. Several tunnels branching off the main cavern remain unmapped, and every survey conducted since the 1970s has turned up material that pushes the site's timeline further back than the last one claimed.
Rio Secreto. On the Yucatan coast near Playa del Carmen sits a flooded cave river system that stayed completely unknown to modern science until local landowners stumbled onto an entrance in the early 2000s. Rio Secreto stretches for tens of kilometers of interconnected underground rivers, chambers, and crystalline mineral formations that took hundreds of thousands of years to form in complete isolation from sunlight, wind, and surface erosion. Inside, explorers found stalactite and stalagmite formations so untouched that some sections had never recorded a single human footprint before their discovery. A genuine first contact moment happening not centuries ago, but within living memory. Early survey teams also found scattered animal bones and traces suggesting ancient use of certain accessible chambers near the surface, though the deepest galleries show no sign anyone had ever reached them before modern cavers arrived with ropes and lights. The system connects through underground water flow to the same vast karst network that feeds the cenotes near Chichen Itza, meaning the sacred wells the Maya threw offerings into, and this pristine, untouched river may share the same hidden plumbing running beneath the entire peninsula. Only a portion of the mapped system is open to exploration today, and cave surveyors continue to find new passages branching off into total darkness every single year, meaning the true size of the river hiding under that stretch of coastline is still, quite literally, being written.
Sistema Huautla. 895 meters straight down, cave explorers hit a wall of water in a cave system carved into the mountains of Oaxaca, and it remains the deepest known cave in the entire Western Hemisphere. Sistema Huautla connects more than 20 separate entrances scattered across the mountainside into a single interconnected network stretching over 64 kilometers, a labyrinth so vast that expedition teams spend weeks living underground, hauling food, tents, and diving equipment through passages barely wide enough for one person. In 2004, a diver named Ian Rolland died attempting to push past the flooded terminus known as the Sump, one of several fatalities the system has claimed since serious exploration began in the 1960s. Local Mazatec communities living above the cave have their own name for what lies beneath their feet, and long before scientists arrived, they treated certain entrances as forbidden ground, places where the mountain itself was understood to swallow anyone careless enough to go too deep. Every attempt to push past the deepest known sump has ended the same way, divers turning back at the edge of visibility with air running low, the true bottom of the system still unconfirmed. Cavers keep returning anyway. Somewhere past that wall of black water, Sistema Huautla may still be getting deeper, and nobody currently alive has seen how far down it actually goes. Every expedition that pushes the known depth even a few meters further rewrites the record for the entire hemisphere, which means the deepest point on this continent, right now, underneath Mexico, is still technically unconfirmed.
If you thought this was terrifying, you are not ready for what they found in the video on your screen. Click it right now. The truth is worse than you think.